Greetings, students, and welcome to this episode of The Professor Travel. I am The Professor Travel, coming to you from Orange County, California. This is the vlog and the podcast where we learn together, where we discuss things together, where we talk about travels and the places that you want to go and places you didn't even know existed, and the place where you go to enjoy life more. You can always reach me on all of the different types of my social media, starting with, of course, my website, which is at theprofessortravel.com. You can also find me on both YouTube and Facebook at The Professor Travel. On Twitter, you can find me at The Professor TR1. And then if you're a blogger, you can find me on Blogspot at theprofessortravel.blogspot.com. Today, I have a very special guest with me. Our visiting professor for this episode is Carlos Gan. Carlos, wave hi to everybody for me.
Hello, everybody.
Carlos just recently got back from a trip to Cuba, and I wanted to talk with him about that. But before we get into that, Carlos, for my students that are listening, can you tell us a little bit about your credentials, like just some things about your education and maybe some places that you've traveled to?
Well, I'm in the last course to finish my master's in organizational leadership here at Brandman University. So that's my highest level of education.
Nice.
Travel, I've been to, I was born in Mexico, so I traveled Mexico. I'm familiar with Mexico City, the border towns here, like Tijuana, Ensenada. I've been to Vietnam multiple times. In fact, I married a Vietnamese girl.
Mm-hmm.
I've been to Cambodia, went to the temples of Angkor Wat. I've been to Thailand, been to Honduras. So I do a little travel as much as I can.
That's awesome. And it's one of those things I think that I picked up a travel bug as I've gone along through the process, and I really enjoy the travel experience. I find as I get a little bit older, it's just one of those things I'm just really engaged in more and more. So let me ask you this. So you recently went on a trip to Cuba, which is not a place that a lot of people go. What made you want to decide on going to this trip to Cuba?
Well, I have a friend that I used to travel with. In fact, I've been with him to Thailand and China. We kept talking about all the places that we were thinking about going. And so then Costa Rica came up and Cuba came up. And we've been talking about it for years, more than 5 years. And we ended up going without him. I had a friend that works for a brokerage firm that gives him a month sabbatical for every 5 years that he works. So then he goes, hey, let's do the trip to Cuba. So then we said, sounds great. We talked about it somewhere in July, booked the flight, and then from there on did research on everything possible that we could do and go. And my friend decided on the 3 cities that we actually ended up visiting,
Okay.
which was Havana. And then we went to Varadero, which is in a region called Matanzas.
Okay.
We went to the Caribbean side, and we went to a town called Trinidad, which is a colonial town. In fact, the picture that you see on the PowerPoint presentation is the town. It's more than 400 years old, so everything is exactly the way it was, plus the electrical wires that you see.
All right. Well, we're going to get into that in just a couple minutes, but let me ask you this. So when exactly did you start planning for this? You said July. How long was that timeline between when you started planning for this?
We were looking at flights then, and the flight that we actually didn't go until September. So it was like a 3-month planning. So then during the time that we had bought the tickets, looked into what currency exchange, how it works, because Cuba is a very close country. And then we looked at health, all the requirements. So they were saying that you needed to buy a medical insurance, because should you get injured, like on a horse, if we fall, then you have to evacuate, then you have to have proof of insurance. But actually, we got there and they didn't even ask for proof of insurance. So that was a needed thing, but we didn't even have to show proof of it.
Okay. So let's start to talk about some of the pre-planning stage in this process. What kind of a visa is required in order to be able to go to Cuba?
Okay, so in order to go, you need this travel pass. So the travel pass are sold at the Miami airport next to the boarding gate.
Okay.
The cost of the boarding pass, because it's not a visa, it's called a boarding pass, and it's blank. You actually fill it yourself. Is $50, but then the person selling it to you charges you another $50 for processing, which is, just a ripoff. But you have to pay it. I ended up buying mine online through this travel website that does travel arrangements for Cuba for $75. So I saved myself $25. I understand that you can actually buy the travel pass when you land for $20, but we didn't want to take a chance getting there and not being able to get in because we didn't have it. So
Yeah.
it was worth having it before you show up.
Yeah, I can imagine, and this is the same type of situation. And you've been to China yourself before, so you understand that sometimes. Can you imagine the situation of having gone from all the way from like LAX, for example, all the way to China, and then being stuck in the airport because they won't let you in based on your visa or based on your passport situation? I can
Right?
imagine.
I've had opportunity of getting the visa in advance. China requires a visa. Vietnam requires a visa.
Mhm.
Uh, Cambodia is only a landing visa, and you pay in U.S. dollars. So I've had all kinds of experiences, with visa requirements for different countries.
Okay, cool. And let me ask you this with Cuba, because I know for purposes of going to places like India or some of the places in Africa, you sometimes need to have you visit like a travel doctor ahead of time to just see if there's any type of travel medications or anything that you need. Did you have anything like that, or was it just the health
Yes,
insurance?
I actually consulted my GP, and they told me go to the State Department website, and there weren't any required things. But then they suggested if I wanted malaria medicine or things like that to go to an exotic medicine doctor, and I ended up not doing it. So basically, what I did is, since they suggested that we bring everything you possibly need there, I bought a first aid kit that included bandages, everything, and then in addition to that, I bought enough Imodium and Pepto Bismol to uh, cover the 9 days that I was there, not just for me, but for the group that I went to. I went as a group of four. So we had that. And then there's this other thing that I learned from Thailand. It's called activated charcoal
Oh
tablets.
yeah,
And
I use
those
that all the
really, really
time.
help. Yeah.
No, I use activated charcoal all the time. I think it's fantastic for your stomach.
We brought bug spray,
Mhm.
but believe it or not, on the most tropical area that we were in Cuba, there were very few mosquitoes, if any. I didn't get bit.
Wow, nice. So let's continue to talk about the pre-packing stage. Did you also need to pre-pack any sunblock of any sort, or?
Right, we brought SPF 50. So you gotta. We basically went on carry on only. So everything that I bought was 3 ounces or less
Okay.
liquid. So I put small packages of shampoo. So then I a small bar of soap. So for every city that we visited, I had enough shampoo and a bar of soap to shower. And obviously toothbrush and toothpaste, but they tell you to bring everything. In fact, there was somebody that I talked to that had been there, and they said even bring toilet paper, and we brought a roll of toilet paper just in case.
That doesn't surprise me because I mean I know when we went to Bangkok a couple of years ago, and you may have had the same experience. Sometimes when you go to some of these outdoor places, they won't have toilet paper, and you just need to make sure to purchase. Like when you just go to like a 7-Eleven or a store, pick up a thing of toilet paper, just keep it in your backpack with you, so that way when you're going into these outdoor like establishments, to go to the restroom, you have that available to you.
Well, believe it or not, it's a cottage industry. On the roadside stops that we did, they would have ladies outside the toilet selling or actually giving you toilet paper, but you have to tip them.
Oh,
So there is toilet paper, but you have to basically give them a tip, which is basically buying it. If you need toilet paper, but um, you know, we
you got
brought our
you got
own.
to do though.
Yeah.
So it is what it is. Now, you had told me earlier you left from LAX, correct?
Yes, we flew out of LAX with American Airlines.
Okay, and you flew into Miami, and then from Miami, you were only there for about an hour, and then you flew into Havana, Cuba, correct?
Right, right.
Okay, perfect. Let's talk about the flight really quick. How was your flight? Did you start with? Were you in coach? Were you in? Did you get upgraded? Where were you at?
We flew coach because that was the cheapest ticket. We when we flew and when we bought it the tickets in July, the ticket was only like 327 per person round trip.
Nice.
Right now, being that Cuba is on their 500-year anniversary and it's the high season, I've seen prices as high as $1,200 round trip.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. It's one of those places I know that we've had some challenges over the last couple of years in getting into, and then they finally opened it up. It's now that a lot of people want to be able to get in there. But there's also been some restrictions, I think, on some cruise lines now to where they can't.
Right. The Trump administration actually forbid private planes, private boats, and cruise ships from going there. So effectively, tourism somewhat came to a screeching halt because a lot of the people go there on a cruise and hang out in Havana, go to Old Town and visit. But that kind of stopped. So they were, very eager to see tourists come and, by commercial airlines.
So the airlines really haven't been affected so long as they're commercial airlines, correct?
Correct. Commercial airlines is to fly. So Delta, United, JetBlue, American fly, and then there's foreign airlines. There's the I think a Venezuelan airline in Mexicana flies there. So basically, if you were to fly Mexico or Aeromexico, I'm sorry, you go from LA to Mexico City or Cancun, and then you have a layover, and then you fly into Havana.
Okay, that's not that bad. So you arrive in Havana. How long are you going to be staying in Havana for?
What we did is once we decided on the three cities that we decided to spend 2 days on each, and then the rest of the time traveling to and from the different cities that we visited.
Okay. And you decided to use Airbnb throughout your entire trip, correct?
Right. Well, as I mentioned before, there's 12 reasons why you can actually travel to Cuba as an American, and only three of them are most effective. One of them is that you're actually there to help the people of Cuba. The other one is educational, meaning that you actually have some kind of university research program, or you visiting another university. So those are the two that I remember of the three that are actually effective in traveling into Cuba. So using Airbnb is supporting the local people, because I'd say 90% or more of all the businesses in Cuba are actually government owned. Even if you see names like Melia Hotel, which is a European,
Mhm.
they're 51% owned by the Cuban government. So basically, everything is Cuban government owned.
What what did you say the first? What would you say the first two were again? It was educational purposes, and what was the other one?
And the other one is the helping people of Cuba.
Okay, does that include charitable work? Or not?
Yes, I mean, one of the suggestions they made, which we didn't, is to actually bring uh, crayons, I mean, not textbooks, notebooks, pens, and pencils to donate to a school. But we ended up not doing that. We just basically figured that eating at private homes, what they call paladares,
Yeah.
and staying at Airbnbs is supporting the people of Cuba, because it's a non-government owned entity.
Now you were educating me earlier when we initially were setting up this podcast slash vlog. You had, because I had heard sometimes Havana is also referred to as Habana, and can you tell me a
Well,
little bit about
here
that?
we call it Havana with a B. I mean, with a V as in Victor. But there, the proper name is La Habana.
La
With
Habana.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect, awesome. So, what did you do while you were in that city? What kind of activities did you do?
Okay, so basically, we pre-planned everything, and I used TripAdvisor to do research as to transportation. So then, some people suggested something similar to a Greyhound service is government owned called Via Azul. Uh, so we figure, okay, when we get there, we book it. But it turns out that because of the gasoline shortage, a fuel shortage due to the blockade between Venezuela and Cuba. Fuel is scarce, so uh, the railroads don't run because Hurricane Irma damaged a lot of the railroad tracks, so it's suspended. And then a lot of the public transportation, like I mentioned, that's similar to what a Greyhound would be or a tour bus type, is suspended until further notice. So the only way to get around effectively is taxi. So
Okay.
by the time we got there, we had already hired a taxi driver because the first place we stayed at, our host told us how much it would cost to go from the Havana airport into the address that we were going to stay at. And this is between 25 to 30 Cuban convertible pesos,
Okay.
which is equivalent to a dollar. So every cook is a dollar.
Okay. All right. First off, I mean, I obviously want to know not just about the transportation, but like, what was the food like? What kind of activities did you do there? What were some things that you engaged in?
So we engaged the taxi driver that picked us up as a tour guide because he has a tour service. So
Oh,
basically,
okay.
uh, with that, they took us to the place where we're staying at. We dropped the stuff off because we were kind of early. You know, they have just like hotels a certain amount of time to check in, and apparently the people that stayed at that condo that we rented kind of damaged the place. So then the host had to clean it up. So they told us to come back later. So we went on a tour of mainly to the old Havana.
Okay.
Normally, they say it takes 3 days to see all of old Havana. So we visited all the old Havana, the government building, and all the I guess hotels that are on the strip where tourists gather.
Mhm.
And then we went and visited on that same day uh, a very famous bar called La Floridita, which is known for their daiquiris, and that's where Ernest Hemingway visits when he's in town,
Oh, that was awesome. So you got to see
right?
where Ernest
In
Hemingway
fact,
hung out.
in fact, there's a brass statue of him at the bar, so you can actually pose and have your picture taken with him. So we had some daiquiris there, and then we toured and we got hungry, and then there's actually this other famous bar called La Bodeguita del Medio, which means that the shop in the middle. And upstairs from that, actually, they're supposedly known for the best mojito. But we didn't drink there. The tour guide told us that the food at that place was very good. So you go upstairs, and we had a very good meal. Like basically, we ate lobster every day.
Wow. I can imagine that the seafood that is gotten through Cuba has got to be amazing.
They're limited, but what they have is really good. I mean, lobster. Basically they give you a tail and a half with rice and beans, which is which you would be. What I guess then we know it as dirty rice, which is the mixture between rice and beans.
Hmm.
Then drinks. So a lobster tail like that was meal was $23. So it wasn't that expensive compared to what you would get here.
Yeah, that's not bad for lobster. That's not bad at all. So, okay, what was your next destination after you had gone from
Once we finished with Havana, we went to this other beach town in the Matanzas region called Varadero, which is supposedly the best, uh, by far the best Caribbean beach in the Caribbean area. So we rented another house, at Airbnb, at the entrance of the town, and we stayed there 2 days. In fact, the house was right in front of a private cove where people were swimming. So that's what was the next step. We were there 2 days and took the same tour taxi driver that showed us Havana actually helped us in Varadero as well.
nice. So I assume you guys visited the cove at least once. Did you guys just hang out at the beach there? Did anybody do any scuba or snorkeling at all?
Well, the basically the cove was not very big, and we didn't actually go into the water there. Where we ended up going is drove probably another hour into a nicer beach, and we spent some time there, hanging out, taking pictures. In fact, at the beach, one of the beaches we visited was right next to a golf course,
Hmm.
so it was very beautiful.
Were you able to golf at all?
No, because we were just on the way there, and we didn't have golf clubs, and I'm not sure what the tee-off fee was, but we're not golfers, so it would have been a waste to do it.
That's okay. It's all a matter of what kind of fun and available resources are there.
Because we were limited of time, so we just basically try to see the whole city in one day.
Question for you. For the not only Havana but also the current city that you were in right now, did you have an opportunity to see if there were, even though I know you were limited on time, did you have an opportunity to see whether or not there were any museums in the area?
Oh yes, many.
Okay.
We actually visited this housing complex. I'm not sure if you know about the Spanish architect Gaudi,
Oh
but
my
this guy
gosh,
was
yeah.
on the same vein as that. So he basically built his home with broken tiles. So it's one of those things that you don't see that often. But that house is a popular destination for people that go to Habana. So we went
I,
to this house that's got that Gaudi-like uh, architecture.
Yeah, it's very. For those who are not familiar with Gaudi, you guys will definitely have to take a look at some of my videos on Barcelona. The his style is very whimsical and it's very unique, very
Right.
different. Though I mean, sometimes it can range from like a little bit morbid and gothic to like
Yes.
almost like Dr. Seuss in some ways. It's really
Yes.
all
Yes.
over the map, but it's really fascinating to look at.
In fact, we had the opportunity. He happened to write in when we were there, and we had our picture taken with I forget his name, but he's the guy that actually built this. And it's actually free. You can go visit the house for free, although they ask for donations. But if you wanted to visit it, it doesn't cost anything except the cost of transportation to get there.
Okay, cool. Awesome. And so you spent 2 days here in this general area, correct?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. And how was the food in this area?
Um. Okay. So the host of the second house we stayed at in Varadero recommended this restaurant that was maybe a couple hundred yards from where the house was on the third floor, and once again, lobster.
You know what? I think when you're dealing with this, you probably can't get sick of lobster. It's just one of those things. It's like if you were to ever visit Maine, you probably have to kind of get used to the concept of having lobster a lot.
I'm not fond of lobster, but my friends were, and the joke between us when we're here is that we're gonna go on lobster dinner. You know how expensive it is, but over there,
Yeah.
the further we got away from Havana, the cheaper it got.
Oh, really? Okay, that's
So this
interesting.
time it was only $20 for the same meal that we did before. But before we left Havana, our tour guide, uh, she's Cuban, but her name is Yuri, and recommended that we try this Spanish restaurant.
Mm.
And we went there and we had a Spanish meal that was, I mean, if they had Michelin, it would be probably like a 2 or 3 star Michelin restaurant. It was
Wow,
old
that's
school,
really high
very dark
praise.
inside. Yeah, the food was excellent.
Let me ask you. So, because I'm a huge fan of Spanish food, did they have like paella, or
Yep,
was it
that's what I had.
you had
That's
paella?
right.
Okay.
Yeah,
So, paella, for those who are not familiar with, is kind of a rice dish it has like sometimes it has seafood or chorizo mixed in with it, and
right. It's a mixture of, well, this one, the paella had shellfish,
mhm,
clams, ham, sausage,
yeah,
chicken. So it had a little bit of everything, and it's in a tomatoey sauce.
yeah, exactly. And the tomato is mixed in with the rice, so it takes on like almost a reddish tone typically, and
Yep.
so
Yeah. They
it's
use they
nice.
use saffron to color it, so that's where the color comes from.
Oh, nice, very good. And then, do you know, did the same place also do tapas at all, or nothing, or not quite the same thing?
Um, I'm not sure that they do
Okay.
because we didn't order any, but I mean they do have appetizers that we ordered. So we had like a tuna salad, uh, every time I travel, I always look for fruit. So then they had fruit salad, so I ordered that for lunch, as well as the paella.
Oh, excellent. And
So
how are the drinks there, by the way?
um, very good because basically is rum. Everything there is rum based. So
Across the entire Caribbean.
everywhere we go was mojito, or daiquiri. But when you saw The Godfather, they supposedly had like banana daiquiri, flavored daiquiris. It doesn't exist. It's all just one flavor.
Okay. All right. And then, so you were there for about 2 days. And then after that, where was your next destination? That was
Then
probably,
we went to the Caribbean side to the town called Trinidad, which is a colonial town, and spent another 2 days there, and also stayed at another Airbnb. In fact, the hostess arranged a tour for us.
oh, nice.
Um, so then we actually went on horseback. You see the picture. We actually horseback into a waterfall that's famous there. But the the horse ride was not for the faint of heart because it's all cobblestone road or muddy roads. So
Saw that. Yeah.
uh, if you're not used to riding a horse, it was some pretty
Be awkward.
kind of touch and go moments there. But on the way there, then you get to visit a coffee plantation that is kind of special because most coffee is grown on the highland. This one here was only like 50 feet above sea level. So the guy that actually demonstrated it said that his father did a hybrid of two types of coffee plants and grew this coffee that is only grown there. It's very small. It's very small batch, so sort of like a micro.
Like a microbrew coffee almost.
Right. So when you sit down and you do the tour, basically they sell you a cup of coffee for $2, but they give you a cigar, and the cigars are also grown or made there.
Hmm.
Let me just digress. We did visit that cigar factory, and actually those cigars were outstanding. You were able to bribe the cigar maker, and then we got a couple of recently made cigars, and then one night we smoked them, and they were the best cigars I've ever smoked.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, also, point of order, really quick. The name of the town, this third town that you were in, is
Trinidad.
Trinidad.
But see, everybody thinks Trinidad and Tobago, but
Yeah.
Cuba has a town called Trinidad. It's a longer name, but it comes down to Trinidad. It's on the Caribbean side.
Mhm.
And my friend is the one that chose the places. I actually wanted to go to others, but I think that these were the best places to visit on the first trip.
Excellent. Now, let me ask you this. Would you want to go back?
Well, yes, I wanted to go back during our Christmas break, but the flight is outrageous, so I decided not to go.
Yeah, maybe another time. All right. So then you're heading back now to Havana in order to conclude the trip. How is the return process?
Okay, so we used exclusively the one taxi tour guide to go from Havana to Varadero, and he also took us over to Trinidad.
Mhm.
But on the way back, he told us how much it was gonna cost, and it was like prohibitive because basically for every night that we used them in Havana, he charges $120.
Okay.
Divided by four is not bad, but if you do it a couple, it can get very expensive. The trip from Havana to Varadero was $140,
Mhm.
but the trip from Varadero to Trinidad was $180.
Ah,
Right, so because the oil fuel shortage, the only way to really get around and not be on a schedule is to hire a taxi driver, come to an understanding. And this was actually they were very accommodating. I think that we lucked out by finding this person, and in fact, I found them on TripAdvisor, and they were very accommodating. In fact, they have when we used them exclusively, they had a van, so then we sat comfortably, air conditioned, and then we had a separate tour guide. The lady, she was very knowledgeable. We ended up going to uh, the couple of clubs that she recommended. One was the Buena Vista Social Club, and we actually saw a show there. And one of the original musicians from the band actually sang a song.
Oh,
So it was that was quite an experience. And then we went to another club that was exclusively salsa music. So we went and listened to that. Uh, However, they said that the show would start at 9. It didn't start till midnight. So you
yeah.
just kind of have to be patient.
Yeah. Let's wrap up a little bit here. So the flight back, okay, you flew back on American as well, is that correct?
Right. We bought the round trip ticket. So we basically went from Trinidad back to Havana. We spent another night there on a different condo closer to the Malecon, which is the boardwalk. And it was surrounded by a bunch of restaurants. So we actually had a very nice Italian meal on the last night.
Okay.
In fact, we found a Lebanese restaurant. The food there was outstanding. I mean, I was surprised to see a Lebanese restaurant in the middle of Havana.
Nothing surprises me anymore. I just spoke with someone the other day who visited China and had an Italian meal in China. So it's like, it is what it is. I guess now everybody's pretty much global. So it doesn't surprise me. So how long did you have to, let's get to the actual flight itself heading back, okay? How long was the flight heading back? Did you have to wait in Havana for a long period of time, or was it pretty
We
swift?
basically the flight wasn't gonna leave until like 8 o'clock,
Okay.
and the Airbnb checkout was noon. So we asked if it was possible to just leave our luggage there until time, and we like go somewhere and come back. And then, in fact, the host for the last place in Havana was very accommodating and let us stay till 7 o'clock. At which time, the prearranged taxi driver picked us up, took us to the airport. We checked in.
Okay.
The flight back was basically the same as flying there, which was like an hour and a half. We landed in Miami 10 o'clock at night, and then we had a 6 hour layover, which is the.
Oh, that's
But we actually ended up
bad.
going into town, had dinner,
Okay.
visited a little bit because we were using Uber or Lyft. I forget which one, and then we just went back to the airport and sat there until the flight was ready 6 in the morning, and then we flew back into LAX and clear, went through immigration and clear customs, which was a breeze. It was not as strict as I thought it would be. I actually have a global Sentry card, so you didn't have to stand in line with immigration. You just go to the kiosk where they have the computer. You scan either your global Sentry card or your passport. They take a picture of you.
Mhm.
They ask a couple of questions, and then you're gone. And then you go into customs, and customs didn't even bother checking our luggage. So we were cautious about how much alcohol, how much rum and cigars were brought back. We stayed within the limit, and it wasn't even checked.
Perfect. So let's get to the post vacation then at this point. So, what are the pros of going to a place like Cuba? I mean, why would I go there as opposed to just any other Caribbean island?
Well, one of the reasons I wanted to go, is because it's one of those forbidden cities. It's
Mhm.
sort of like you gotta go there before it becomes too commercial.
Yeah.
It is because when we were there, you didn't see a Starbucks, didn't see a McDonald's. There were no such thing as chain anything.
Yeah.
Well, they have government stores, but they're nothing like a 7-Eleven. You go in there and whatever they have in stock is what you get. In fact, to enter a grocery store, you have to stand in line because they are afraid that you go in there to steal things. So it's very restricted and controlled.
Okay. So for the most part, you would go there because it's kind of like one of those
And
places.
it was a beautiful city. I mean, I just recently read something on, I think, either Facebook or uh, Travel Magazine, where it says that that's probably one of the most beautiful cities, and they're actually restoring a lot of the buildings that are there, and so it's a worthwhile place to visit because everybody's really friendly. Crime is non-existent
Okay.
because everything is government controlled. So the only thing you worry about is the con people that try to con you if you don't know what you're doing. So when you go, be prepared, read up on it, have prearranged everything so that you don't have to go there and try to figure out what to do, because if you don't speak Spanish, it makes it very, very difficult. The reason my friends took me or went with me because I actually am fluent in Spanish.
Excellent. Well, and I appreciate that too. So, I mean, you've shared a lot of different value adds throughout this conversation. What one thing would you say that a brand new person who might be going to Cuba might want to know about? Is it maybe going to those travel aggregator sites, learning a little bit maybe about the
I would recommend going to TripAdvisor and hear what other people's experiences were. There's a lot of videos about Cuba and the towns that you might want to visit in YouTube. So I actually saw a lot of it there. Amazon Prime Video also has a lot of videos about it. And then I also read up on publications that were in Amazon Kindle.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of information to be had, and there's a lot of videos of people that actually experienced what I did, that actually videoed everything. I actually have I took a GoPro, so I have videos. I just haven't been able to edit them to share.
Yeah, and you, for those who don't know, Carlos has an excellent eye for photography and a great video library that he's gonna put up. And I will be more than happy to direct my students to take a look at it once you have it enabled. So much appreciated. By the way, thank you so much for doing this interview. I know my students are going to get a lot from it, because Cuba is just one of those places that not a lot of people have had the opportunity to go to. And you were in a very rare situation where you had that opportunity. So again, thank you so much for coming on to this show today and in order to be able to interview for this. We really appreciate it.
Well, you're welcome. Anytime there are any questions about my experiences that are detailed, just let me know. I'll be more than happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, Carlos. And if any of the students on this have any questions about anything, you can always send questions, comments directly to me at scott@theprofessortravel.com, and I'll be more than happy to share those with Carlos. In the meantime, I would like to thank you so much for being part of this. I would like to thank you for listening, whether you're on the podcast or on a vlog. And until the next time, make every destination a travel adventure. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
Thank
Goodbye.
you. Thank you.